There we are. Hey, everyone.
Hey,
Emergency stream. Well, it's not emergency.
it's not really an emergency. It's just the opposite of what we told you last week, where we did say it was going to be on a different day this week. We just said it would probably be later in the week, and it's turning out it's earlier.
Yeah, because I'm going to Origins tomorrow, and I was bumped up to first class because no one's flying to Columbus. It's like whatever. I just got bumped up, so it's nice to have that. But
Interesting because it's during Origin, so you would think that like that would be the time when people would be.
I don't think it's the same. Like, yeah, when I go to Gen Con, like everyone on that plane is going to Gen Con. I have a feeling not. I talked to a lot of people. I heard a whole bunch of people. No one's ever heard of Origins. So I was like, isn't it like the second biggest gaming convention after Gen Con? But I guess no one knows about it. But anyhow, I'm gonna try to bring my computer, and I'm probably gonna stream with Derek on his channel at least. So I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna stream. I'll bring my stuff. But I figured I'm gonna be out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So let's just get this over with today. But I'll tell you the main reason, because I got something in the mail last night. 71 pounds of books. Here we go. You ready? You ready, Mark?
And, just so you know, the 71 pounds are not one copy of Jewel of the Indigo Isles. I know it seems like it might be 71 pounds for one book, but wow. He wouldn't even show it to me before the show. He wanted us to see together so that you could see my reaction.
So, there. Look at the size of this thing. This is it, baby. It's a 5e. Look at the Jewel of the Indigo Isle. Look, it's real. It's a real thing. Weighs 4 pounds. 4 pounds. And it has about 420, 430 pages. And just give you an idea, here is Core Rulebook. Here is Jewel of the Indigo Isles. They're almost identical in size.
That's because it's of the higher quality paper is thicker, right?
Yes. And also you can see it's got 3 bookmarks. 3 ribbon bookmarks.
You're gonna need 3 bookmarks. It's to go through. I could
have as many as I wanted.
Things,
but I figured 3 is enough. And then
I think 3 is good because then I can have one. Like I'm running Jewel of the Indigo Isles probably starting on Saturday this week.
Ooh, look at that.
And I'm probably gonna want to have one that's in the appendices, one that's where I am in the adventure, and then one for flex.
So look, it lays flat. And just so people know, because people were worried about it falling apart, see that? Stitching. You see the stitching? Stitched pages.
Fully stitched pages and not just glued on with adhesive that's going to fall off.
Like some other companies that we won't mention. But this thing is... I was actually impressed because we do have a couple, I can't show them, but we do have 2-page spreads, but they came out great, like a 2-page spread here, because sometimes in the crease.
Sometimes up, when you do stitched, it can make it harder to see the 2-page spreads, but that looks as really good as the glued ones look until they fall apart.
Yeah, no, this one's fantastic. It actually is laying completely flat, like you can see here. Like you can go pretty far into it.
I guess you get what you paid for when you paid for the most deluxe possible, even compared to what Paizo does.
This is ridiculous. I mean, this is above everyone. This is above. It's too much. It's too much book. The problem is, so a pallet, it weighs, I was looking because I'm shipping them out, and a pallet of books is a ton of books, and there's not even that many books on them, because if you do the math, it's like 4 pounds. Like normally our books, we get something like 20 books in a case, but this says 4
pounds. A ton being 2,000 pounds, that would be 500 books if they're 4 pounds each.
Yeah, approximately. Yeah. Well, there's each box. Our other books, that's usually like 16, 18, 20 books per case. This one, it's 8. Because so freaking.
It's big. It's a big one.
Too much book, I tell you. But so people wonder, because like people are asking, where is it? All right, here we go. I got the book. This is from the printer. They sent me 12.
Is this the early review pass copies, or is this like the signs of things to come?
It so they can ship it. This is me.
Great.
Because every so often, I don't see any mistakes, and I've checked it, but like I've heard mistakes of people accidentally having two signatures in the book, and then like that's a nightmare, and then you have to like reload.
And if that was on all of them somehow, then that would be a big problem. So
right, so
it makes sense.
So you get
it's
you
coming,
get copies.
Everybody.
And then as soon as I tell them, they ship it. It's actually about 2 weeks early, so they actually finished it early, and then it gets.
That's nice of them.
Yeah, and then it gets shipped. It's supposed to get shipped out. It's supposed to be shipped out early July. Now it's going to get shipped out probably the end of this month, and then it's as quickly as it gets into port, gets on the trucks, gets to the warehouse, and then they'll start sending them out, and then that will be it. Thank God.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to getting my hard copy too.
Do I have to check every single book? Yes, I check every single book.
Steven checks all of the books. You could see like
4,000 books.
You could see little smudge marks from whatever Steven was eating that day on the corners of your pages for when he checked to make sure it didn't have an extra signature.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So no, it's not 71 pounds each. It was actually in 3 boxes.
That was my joke.
It's
4 pounds each.
But
my joke was
it's
just
each.
one book.
That's still a lot. That is
still
like
a lot.
Ridiculous. This thing is ridiculous. And the cool thing is, I just got off the line with my distributor. These will be in Barnes & Noble probably in September. So you'll be able to get these at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and pretty much, there's a PDF. I mean, if you go to, you can get the whole thing. Just go to battlezoo.com and the whole thing is available now. And those of
you can get the first chapter for free.
Yes.
On battlezoo.com.
Yes.
It's a very substantial amount of the book, plus also support material and a city. So even if you just want to check it out, we give you a lot for free so you can make sure, see if it's something that's up your alley. Yes,
this is Jewel of the Indigo Isles. I see there's some new people, and this is our adventure path that I've been working on for 2 years, and this is the single hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Period.
That includes starting your really successful business that makes websites, right? The Jewel of the Indigo Isles.
This was way harder.
No, way harder. The RPG industry is rough. It's difficult, and it's sometimes unforgiving compared to even other unforgiving industries. But that's why that's why it's hard to be a success story like Roll for Combat and Battlezoo, where you just kind of have everything locked and loaded in advance like Steven did. You have enough resources to start it off, and you hit the ground running with a first Kickstarter that's that successful.
Yeah, well, that was a lot of luck, but
luck was definitely part of it. But you also you use the right people to make the right products. Like if you look at the people who wrote Jewel of the Indigo Isles, the 3 adventure authors were like the 3 people at Paizo who have had developed some of the most adventures at that time, like the head of the AP line, Adventure Path line, the head of all the other adventure lines, who's now the head of all narrative at Paizo, and the senior developer of Adventure Paths. So,
well, the thing is, I love Adventure Paths, and I didn't think it would be that hard, but like the thing is, and I'm looking at this book, you see a book like this, it's first between the 2 books, it's 500,000 words. It's actually over 500,000 words. It's not the big team. It's not to toot my own horn, but I did all the art direction. I did all the layout. I did all the editing. I designed the adventure. Yes, it was written by many people and they wrote it, but I had to do everything else. And so that's the thing. It's not like we had this team that did the layout. No one did the layout. I did the layout. I did everything else.
It was you and me. We had some David and Ross did the 5e conversion, more or less. There were some bits of monsters and other things that our usual 5e converters, Paul and Bill did. And then that was it, other than the freelance. But the freelance writing of it was still very intense. Some of it involved more backs and forths than usual for Adventure Path as it expanded larger and larger, and more sections were being added. But even if you count the 3 freelance authors, the 3 5e people, some of which only did a little bit compared to the scope of the project, and you and me, the 8 people plus the proofreaders who it's still under a dozen people who did this entire project. It's that's counting. I mean, you have to count the artists, I guess.
I count the artists.
But you use like only a few artists, and like part of the reason it took so long is the cartographer is one cartographer.
Yes, I learned my lesson.
One of the best cartographers in the entire business, but he was very busy, and to get his consistent feel for all of the maps, we had to wait for him on the last 2 maps for I estimate like 4 months to get those last 2 maps.
He did all the maps for he does all the maps for WoTC. It's a Blando, and so he's very busy. And to be honest, it was that actually was one of the biggest holdups is the maps. In fact, this probably would have been out probably 6 months earlier if it wasn't for the maps. I'm not throwing him under the bus, but it just is what it is. But yeah, the book is going to be done, and then you'll probably see it for the next 20 years, because the only good thing about Adventure Pass, not the only, but you can keep putting them out over and over again over time, because once it's done, it's done. It's funny. I see a lot of people talking about it, and there's a thread on there right now, because it starts off. I probably should have said something in the intro, but it's too late now, obviously. But it's like, it starts off very easy, and people are like, it started off way too easy. They're like, oh, this is so easy. I'm like, yes, it's on purpose. It's a very easy adventure. It starts off very casual. It gets harder. And now I'm talking to someone who's there's 12 chapters, and on chapter 4, they've already had 2 deaths. So I was like, don't think it stays easy.
I even think in chapter 2, there's one part where you have to fight several battles in a row without resting in order to do a magical thing that an NPC is doing. Yeah. And that's, I think, the first part where you have to think and you have to do challenges. But up until then, it's kind of like the tutorial levels in some games where the fights are a little easier. You get to kind of have fun, show off your abilities, because some adventure paths just throw you into the grinder at the beginning, and that's not what Jewel does.
Yeah, and the way it works is that it starts off on purpose, kind of simple, and then also people, again, the closest I say Pixar, but actually I'd say Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Or even the Suicide Squad. Not Suicide Squad, anything by James Gunn is the closest analogy to these books. I'd say if this book was a movie, it'd be a James Gunn movie, in the sense that the stakes get raised very quickly, and then James Gunn has a lot of disgusting things in his movies, because people are like, oh, it starts off, it's so kiddie. We have multiple content warnings in this book. It's not.
There's a few sections that have content warnings. It's pretty easy because the content warnings describe what to do. It's very easy
to change if you're running this for
change
kids.
It and remove that stuff. But it's like a Pixar movie, like Steven always says, where there's always some kind of dark elements in a Pixar movie, like Sid the Toy Destroyer and the body horror of like those broken toys that were in there, and all the way back in Toy Story. So
there's all Pixar movies. Like think about like Bruce the Shark. Like that part is scary. Like there's a lot of very scary stuff in Pixar movies.
The brightness and the scariness contrast each other. I always use Macbeth and the drunken porter scene for an example from Shakespeare, but it just definitely works to hit emotional highs and lows. So we made it to 315.
Well, let me 1 second, because a lot of people are asking about the Foundry module. So Foundry module chapters 1 through 4 are in the Foundry, and we actually have, because it comes out in parts, chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8 are being tested. So if I was to guess, it should come out next week, I hope. So hopefully...
Oh, that's soon. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's not as soon as I like. The guy who was putting it in got really sick. And also, Foundry version 11 has a lot of new updates, and it sort of messed things up.
Yeah, I knew it was because of Foundry 11.
Yeah, one of the nice things is Foundry comes out with new versions very quickly, but when they come out with a new version, they kind of mess up the old one a little. So it's sort of just be patient. So
it is what it is.
Within 2 weeks is 100%. Hopefully by next week, the next book. So there's 3 books. There's books 1, 2, and 3. Book 1 took forever. Book 2 is pretty much done. We're just testing it. Book 3 is the final one.
Book 3 is the big one. It's
gonna
longer
take a little
than the
while
others.
because actually we also have some new rules and stuff in there that we need to automate or figure out how to do.
Having that automated would be super awesome, though. I'm sure that people would love having that automated if they can, but it's very different than normal. So
yes, and if anyone out there is a pro at Foundry, we actually have a couple of testers, but I might be looking for a few more. If you bought it already and might want to help out, let me know. Just contact me on Discord because, well, I have like 2 or 3 very good testers, but we usually have like 70 or like 80 testers when we do testing. So I probably want a little bit more. Actually, believe it or not, there was only 1 bug found in the Foundry module, and that was it.
That's unusual for anything that's being coded.
Yeah. That was
That's probably lucky. It's luck and skill. You've got to be skillful, and then you also have to get lucky to be that low on bugs.
So, by the way, the reason why it's as good quality as the Abomination Bolts for the beginning box is the same guy who codes all of those codes mine.
Well, there you go. So, of course, it's the same quality because it.
Not really, because I designed it though. So it's done in HTML. I designed the module. He codes it.
Oh, fair enough.
So
fair enough.
I did the layout.
You may have added extra bells and whistles, just for the heck of it.
Yes, they don't do. They have a. I would actually argue those are over designed because they actually changed the interface, and it's called the Chrome. That's the outside of a browser. It's called Chrome.
Okay.
They changed the Chrome. I actually don't like changing the Chrome because there's a lot of inherited functionality and learning that is lost. Like, you know how to use a tool because you use it. So changing how way a scroll bar works or how windows work, you lose that inherent knowledge base. So I actually don't like changing, like, for example, putting page numbers in. You either put them in the lower left right hand corners, which is the most common, or you put them in the center of the page, which is second most common, but you don't want to put them in the top of the page. Like, no one puts page numbers at the top of the page because that's not where you expect them to be. That's not, you lose all this inherited learning.
Right.
So I don't like changing Chrome, which I'd say makes the modules look better, but they're actually harder to use. So ours is somewhere in between, which I found people actually really liked. And I actually see the guy who codes it is saying something to me. He tells me, the art is missing for chapter 8. Okay, I will give him 2 pieces of art.
There you go.
There you go. He's probably
that'll be important for chapter 8.
And they're all French. Do you know that? There's a French guy. They're all French. Why is everyone who works with us French, Mark? What's going on there?
I don't know. Are they all from France, or are some of them from Quebec?
No, they're from France.
Wow, I know several that are from France. That's why I was wondering if they were all from France, or if it was just different francophone.
No, they're like 5-6 hours ahead of us every time.
All right, there you go.
Like, all of our guys are from France. I don't know what's going on over there. I know France is popular.
All right.
Anyhow, back to this.
Shall we talk about 5th edition? Yes. And
oh, by the way, if you're looking at me, see how red I am?
Yeah.
How was your weekend? Look at you. You are so pale. I went out with me and my family and all my friends. We sat outside at a rooftop for a few hours. We all came downstairs. They all look fine, and I am as red as a lobster. Look at that.
Wow. Yeah, you are kind of a lobster.
And what the heck? So I'm sunburned. They're all fine. I don't know what happened there.
I get badly sunburned if I go out in the sun too long, but I don't go out in the sun too long. I can tell, so that helps.
To quote someone, when I went on a beach with a friend of mine who was as white as you, and someone said, "Dude, do you just get out of prison?" Because he was so white. That's what you look like. You look like you just got out of prison, Mark. Looks like you have not seen the outside ever.
It's not the whitest that I have ever been. I was one time like really pale and kind of sickly because of a a electrical engineering lab that I had in college that just did not work. And it turned out I had done everything right, but the part they gave me that was supposed to produce the sound effect was faulty. And none of the TAs figured it out until I just advanced it all the way to the top. And I'm like, I can't. This is the end. I can't keep going with this. Please just give me partial credit or something. And they're like, oh no, you did it perfectly. How long have you gotten it to make this sputtering sound? And I was like, oh, that was about like 30 hours ago. And like 10 requests to TAs. And they're like, oh no, yeah, we gave you a part that was bad and can't do better than that.
So again, do subscribe. If you have questions, super chat, and we'll definitely answer them. I will be at Origins, so if you see me, say hi. I've never been, so I'm actually pretty excited.
There we go.
A little worried. Not really, but it's always something new place, it's very rare I go to a new convention. So this week, what are we talking about? I don't even remember.
This topic is one that is
my idea, right?
That goes all the way back to even your Steve's 100% accurate predictions, like your predictions you made about what D&D would do that were before the OGL crisis, before anything. You already made a prediction that was kind of similar to the topic of this episode, but we've never given it its own episode. So what you called this episode is why 5th edition will be the last edition of D&D for now and the future.
Yes. So I got this idea, and I always say kind of where I get these ideas from. So I was playing Final Fantasy 16, the demo. If anyone has a PlayStation 5, it comes out tomorrow. No, 2 days. Comes out in 2 days. And the demo is really, really different than past Final Fantasy games. Like, the game is so different, and people were talking about that. And I watch a lot of videos. I like to see the behind the scenes and stuff. And they were saying that with Final Fantasy 16, the way the combat system works, and you've played these, not all of them, but you've played enough, is that when Final Fantasy first came out, it was all turn-based, obviously, and that was what it was known for, is a turn-based combat system, and it kept that turn-based combat system for a very long time. But the combat system in Final Fantasy 16 is very Devil May Cry real-time combat, where you fight very much like you would in Elden Ring or Devil May Cry. It's action. It's action-based combat. And there's no turn-based is gone. Not only is turn-based gone, but they even have other types of combat, like Pizer Dragoon type of like fighting in the air with like missiles and stuff. And I'm just like, wow, this is really different. Like they totally abandoned their roots. Probably for the first time. Like, they've always kind of slowly moved off of those, but now it's just gone. Like, it's just completely gone. It's a completely different direction. And I was listening to interviews with them, and they said that today's audience just doesn't want what, other, past audiences want. Is they just do not want the turn-based strategy games. It's like, this is just not what's important to people who are playing Final Fantasy, and that they really, wanted more of an action-based game, and that they are changing the whole concept of Final Fantasy more around modern gaming and the modern gaming needs. So it gave me an idea of thinking about how what they were trying to do, which I found fascinating, is that so D&D 5th edition came out 10 years ago. And the combat designer on 16 used to work in Devil May Cry. In fact, they got all these people from action-oriented games to help assist on Final Fantasy 16. Like, they're really going all in on this, and it's just completely shifted from Final Fantasy 7, which I'm sure a lot of people know of or have played, and most popular one probably of all time. And all these JRPGs. So I was thinking about this, and I was like, in 10 years, the game has really changed. And what they were trying to do is come out with a 6th edition and try to modernize it for audiences. And everybody rejected it significantly, quite a bit. So they have doubled down, and this like latches onto what we were talking about last week, Mark, is that they have doubled down saying this is fifth edition, and it's going to be fifth edition for at least the next 10 years. So basically, it's going to be fifth edition for 20 years. So 20 years of fifth edition. But does that mean they can't change the game? Because when they actually did try to change it, people really didn't like it. Even though it feels like they really do need to change the game. It's a catch-22. People feel the game should be changed, and you hear a lot about that. And yet, when they tried to change it, everyone was yelling at them to change it. So they can't win. There's just no win situation.
Before we go into this future and your predictions, maybe we should talk about what the baseline is, what the industry wisdom is, and what normally happens with editions. Also, we did have a super chat.
Yes.
That, back to our previous topics, said that I am not sickly, I'm safely reflective, apparently, according to our super chat. So the industry wisdom and the expectation for editions in the tabletop RPG industry is that roughly every 8 to 10 years, you'll need to put out a new edition. And the reason for that is that eventually your sales are going to, no matter what you do in general, your sales are going to start going down with each successive book. Whether you're D&D 3 and you're like, okay, now we're going to put out like this book that's about ice and cold stuff. And like it becomes more niche compared to the bigger ones from the beginning. Your older books may still be selling kind of evergreen, but the new products that justify having your staff members make them sell for less and less. And look, I actually liked that ice book from 3.5. I thought it was a good ice book, but they were given as examples of the churn and just continuing to put out books until you got to ones that didn't feel as justified. And so in order to prevent that, every 8 to 10 years, roughly, an edition cycles into a new edition. And with that new rulebook, you have both some challenges and some possible benefits. And the challenge is retention, because you might lose people if they don't like the changes that are made in the new edition. If they, you're going to have a lot of very high emotional stakes, regardless of anything else. But you'll be able to make changes, possibly fix some problems that you've seen after that many years in the system, iron things out, maybe make things a little more modern towards what people are looking into. New people might try it, and those who got disillusioned with your old system because of some of the issues you're fixing may come back to the fold. But regardless, since your new books are going to be like a player's handbook and a dungeon master's guide and a monster manual, and not an ice book, sorry, I really don't want. I liked that ice book from 3.5. It's going to sell a lot of books. And so the industry, that's the industry wisdom, is that this just has to happen. Like an Ouroboros biting its own tail, you'll just produce a new edition again and again, whether it's a 3.5 instead of a 3.0, and that can extend it some amount because they're sort of separate editions. That's how it normally goes. But Steven, what you're predicting, and that I think you're right, is that things are going to change now because of Wizards has a different business model than the industry wisdom and anything in the past has done, especially with the VTT / whatever they're going to call it. That's not VTT, the D&D portal or the D&D experience.
Yeah, I mean, what they wanted to do and what they were trying to do was come out with one D&D and then make that one edition, and then they can come out with 6th, 7th, 8th edition. Didn't matter. It would still be called one D&D. People rejected that quite a bit, and people were very angry, and they wanted it to stay 5th edition. So they've done this weird thing where they are coming out with, and I'll call it 5.5. Like, it is going to be 5th edition and supposedly backwards compatible with everything, but they're updating the game. I mean, they're literally going to...
They're making significant changes. Yeah. Like, the backgrounds are adding in like feats, and there's like feats are getting more essential to it, and the classes are all getting significant changes. But it is kind of a 5.5 because it's very similar to 5 for the most part.
And they, mentioned, and I was watching the video again today because they put out a big video like a week and a half ago where they said 2024, game player's handbook, dungeon master's guide. And by the way, they even say in the notes of the YouTube that when it's released, they're taking off the word 2024 and it'll literally just be the DM's guide, the player's handbook, the monster manual, which of course they're going to do because they're never going to change those names. They're bestsellers, and they're just going to keep it the same. But these are going to be a new rule set, quite a bit of a new rule set. But they keep saying it's 5th edition, so I was like, okay, they are going to try to have their cake and eat it too. And by having their cake and eat it too is that they can have it and call everything 5th edition, and they're just going to keep changing the game. And they will change it just enough so it is backwards compatible, but yet still has new functionality. Kind of what Paizo's doing with the remaster, because they're kind of doing the same thing. And they're actually in the end both doing the same thing, is that they're updating their game. They're using everything they've learned the last 5 to 10 years, which they called in the YouTube chat from WoTC, they called it their playtest. Their 10-year playtest is that they know exactly what they need to change, which is fascinating. But they're not going to change the name. It's going to be 5th edition from now and forever. And more importantly, if they go to the VTT model, which is that everything's going to be online, does it even matter anymore? And are editions even going to matter? And I think the answer will be no, because if you're playing on a VTT, and I'm just using this as an example, imagine they made it so that right now, you can fire 1, 2, or 3 magic missiles, or I think in D&D, isn't it like 2, 4, or 6 or something? I forgot how it works in D&D. But let's just say it's 1, 2, and 3 magic missiles. Well, suddenly they change it that now you can fire off 4, 5, or 6 magic missiles. That's just it. They just change it. And is that 5th edition? Is that 6th edition? Is that 5.5 edition? No. It's sort of like, think about World of Warcraft, which I know you played quite a bit, Mark. Right. It's a patch.
Played in the past.
Yes, but you played it enough that, like, World of Warcraft now is so different.
Yeah, I wouldn't recognize it at all.
It's completely unrecognizable. We used to have, remember, we would have 2 rows. I'd have 2 rows of commands and then another 2 rows of side commands on the side of my screen. Because
Look, I played World of Warcraft over 15 years ago.
But you played it back then when there was literally like 30 actions, 40 actions. You know how many actions there are now for most characters?
You said there were like 3 or something like that, right?
Because they use the Fortnite model. They use the Dota model. So Dota, one of the main things about Dota is you only really have 4 abilities, and you can get 5 or 6 out of them, but it's just your hand. It's like these 4. That's it. And they sort of all went to this Dota model of like, well, we'll give you 4 abilities, and that's kind of it. And then Diablo 4 kind of has the same thing. You have 4, then plus your mouse, so you can sneak in like 6, 7 abilities. But it's not like the days of old where I literally, when I was playing my hunter, is that I still have my same mouse. I have my mouse with whoops, I don't want to mess things up here, but I have my mouse as like, I have like 8, 9 buttons on the side plus all these buttons on the top, and each of these side buttons does something different. And I used to have a foot pedal that I would have to use. I'd use both my feet and my hands, both hands and my mouse, because that's how many buttons I had to push. My rotation was like 8 or 9 keys to go through my hunter rotation. Now it's like 3. Now, do they call World of Warcraft version 15? No, it's World of Warcraft. It's all going to be World of Warcraft.
If you look at the patch, it probably says
they're up to patch
version number 15.2.23 or something like that.
Yeah.
But and they don't market it as version 15, though, even though it kind of is, and would say that in the patch notes.
In fact, it was a real pain in the neck, because when I used to play WoW religiously, they would continuously change every year or two. They wouldn't make small changes. They would literally throw out the classes and start over. So you'd have to completely relearn your class.
Even when I was playing it, which was a short period of time for that paper that I was writing, there had been a recent plan change to, like, I think Shadow Priest or something like that, that it was rocking the
Shadow
community back
strong.
then.
Yeah.
So, like, it looks like Ollie Wright was reminded of a similar thing that I was from this, which is the Ship of Theseus paradox in the super chat there. But I mean, absolutely. And if you might think the fact that they're marketing and that they might market it as being 5e forever, does that really mean anything if they'll just change whatever they want? And I think that it does mean something. It actually does have a design implication. It's not pure marketing, because it does mean they can't take leaps that are a certain amount large between updates. Whereas if they weren't planning on marketing it as 5th edition continually, they would be capable of taking a larger leap at any one given time. So it does actually have game design implications and not just pure smoke blowing PR implications of this decision.
Well, I think World of Warcraft is going to be a much closer model to what D&D wants to do, because, and again, I watch a lot, and they can't help it. I say this all the time. You guys are regular watchers of the shows. I listen very, 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 very carefully to what they're saying, especially when they're unscripted, because what's happening is that they're in these meetings and they're always talking about their development processes and their goals and how they're going to be marketing and how they expect to make money. And they're always talking about adventures, which makes sense. So let's think about World of Warcraft for a second. World of Warcraft spends a lot of time and money on raids. And these raids are usually still usable for years later. I mean, some of these raids are 15 years old that people are still doing. And yes, every so often they fine-tune them, but otherwise the raids are pretty much identical to when they originally came out, and they keep the raids the same, even though they completely update the rules and they completely update the way the classes change. Yeah, they'll go back and they'll change some of the monsters and their mechanics and their abilities, but they're pretty much the same. And that's because, okay, they come out with the adventure, they come out with the raid, they come out with the monsters. They're done. You know, it's like the dungeon doesn't have to be redone. The raid doesn't have to get redone. The monsters have to be adjusted slightly as they do updates. But that's content that's evergreen forever. And I now see that they talk about how they want to make sure that you can still buy and play these adventures forever. And
like the raids.
And that's exactly right. I was like, yeah, it makes sense, because that's
going to constrain their design and their jumps.
Yeah.
And it's also about the VTT, because they're going to want to code that adventure in there and then be able to do updates, like when Foundry updated to version 11, they'll go, the D&D portal is updating to its new version. And that may be where they put in the rules updates too. But but if it starts being like WoW, where you don't really pay attention to how many updates it's getting, because it's just kind of getting loaded into the computer on its own, you don't have to, like, the thing with tabletop RPG editions is you buy new books and you have to read the books and learn them and figure out what changed. Whereas when WoW updates, it just downloads and then it updates, and you maybe read the patch notes. You probably should if it affected your class in WoW. And if you don't, you're like, why is this ability that was so broken before really bad? Oh, crap, maybe I should read the patch notes. But you theoretically could play without doing so and just kind of get surprised when things have changed. But whereas in tabletop, you can't. But with their online virtual tabletop, some of it may just be baked in to the point where there's not as much that you have to learn on your own. It makes it easier and it reduces friction for them.
Well, think about this. So when they were doing the whole OGL fiasco, the thing they were trying to protect, and again, this is me reading between the lines, they were trying to protect animations, VTT spell animations. That was their big sticking point. Is that they
didn't want other VTTs that had animations.
Right.
They wanted to be the only one that did.
Right, and it was specifically spells they were talking about.
Yep.
And I was
they gave spells as an example, spell animations as an example, and they said it wasn't the only example.
Yeah, but it's definitely not the only, but it was the one they were thinking of because
they said, for example, spell animations would mean that it's not a VTT anymore, and that it doesn't fit this requirement. It's like, really?
Well, because what they're going to do is think about it. Like, one of the hardest classes to play is, of course, a magic user. And it is a pain. Like, we're up to 15th level. It is a pain, man, Mark. I mean, it's like, you know what it's like. It's just,
casters are very complicated to
so
do.
Many spells.
And they're very strong if you
so
know every little thing that you can do with them at 15th level. But they take a lot of effort, as opposed to Lauren's new fire elemental avatars is a little easier to play because they're not like 50 million spells that you have to.
She has a lot less
of at all times.
But the point is that if you're going to be playing VTT Dungeons and Dragons and you're a wizard, it's going to be like Baldur's Gate 1 or 2, or Neverwinter Nights, or Icewind Dale, or any of those isometric games. I play spellcasters, and those guys will get up to level 20. It's just a sheet. It's just buttons. Like, no one is going to know how Fireball works the way they do now. They're going to press a button. Fireball's going to go off. They're going to literally press the Fireball button. The template will come up. They'll place it on the screen. Press the button.
And
magic fireball. Shoot out. You'll see dice roll. You'll see what the results are. That's it. Now, if they update the spell, does anyone have to go back and relearn it? Does anyone have to go back and
it'll just do it. It'll do it for you.
No one will do anything.
If you change it to shoot more magic missiles, they'll be like, hey, I noticed when I cast magic missile, more purple beams came out from me than before. Do you think something changed? It's like, well, the damage was higher. Maybe you shot more missiles. And you can go back into the chat log. It's like, oh yeah, I actually shot 5, whatever your example was. From before. It really did. Good thing we checked that. I wouldn't have even known I shot 5 missiles. Like, they can definitely do that.
Yeah, I think that's what the future of D&D is going to be. And I will even go as far as to say, I wonder if there will be... I don't think there's going to be 2 versions. I don't think there's going to be the tabletop version and the VTT version. I think they will try to keep them the same.
I think so too.
Yeah,
it doesn't make much sense for them. Then they could have some things that are like exclusive to the VTT to be like, if you're subscribed to the VTT, you can get this exclusive feat that's only in the VTT, but they're not going to make like the games incompatible with each other. That's just an anti-synergy for them. I really, I highly doubt it.
But that's the point, is that if they manage to, within the next, because they keep talking about 10 years. So 10 years time, they have, I'm just going to say 90% of D&D players are online using the VTT, and 10% of people are playing games at conventions or pen and paper. Do they care? Or, it's like, wow, if we need to change the way these spells work, we need to actually iterate and play test and put them in books and print them, or we can just go to a spreadsheet and try it out on the dev server, which will have a development server, which people can play just like WoW does. And they say whether they like the new, and they could also get thousands, millions of people trying out the new class, and they can get real data, depending how you want to pronounce it. You can get data or data that is not third party, not from someone filling out a form, not from someone who, the people who actually wanted to go through and not only play test the game, but then give you feedback, which is an incredibly small percentage of the population, as opposed to you have 20,000 people playing on the dev server. Everyone who plays it, their data gets cataloged, so they know exactly what they're looking at. It's a much more efficient system by far. And now they know, Magic Missile's too powerful. Let's tweak it down a little. Okay, it looks good now. Now that's in the new version of Magic Missile. Now, again, this is no different than any MMO. If you're playing Diablo 4 right now, Diablo 4, tweaking the hell out of it. They keep changing it every other day. They have a slight patch. This gets nerfed. This gets buffed every single day. If you play any MMO, it's a constant thing. And you know what? They're even doing it if you're playing any live action shooters. You're playing any of your, Call of Duties, or if you're playing Fortnite, they're always tweaking, always, constantly. And I think D&D, they're going to still call it 5th edition forever. And when they finally get around to it, they'll just drop it, and that'll just be D&D. But for now, they have to call it 5th edition, which they were trying to drop it to begin with. They were trying to just make it D&D.
Yeah, when they started with
they tried.
Their marketing people, and for good reason, I think, just wanted it to be D&D. So people are like, I want to play D&D. And they didn't put 5th edition prominently onto things.
Yeah.
But because of the blowback from everything they tried to pull with the OGL, as we mentioned in our previous episode that was about this topic in particular, now they're branding 5e pretty prominently into their discussion of what they're calling this new updated like partial edition change. And the question will really be how many times they shift before they stop feeling that they need to put the 5e there to remind people that they're not shifting up. Maybe this will be the last one where they feel they need to hold on because this is right close after the OGL crisis. And once people are in their ecosystem doing their VTT, maybe after that, they'll just stop talking about the number and just say it's D&D. Yeah.
I mean, I'm so that's really the gist of why I said this is the very last edition. It's because I don't think we'll ever see 6th edition. We'll never see 7th. We'll never see.
They just don't have an incentive for it, especially with the new model.
Right, and I think with the new model, and there's no reason. I mean, will there actually be a 6th and 5th, 7th and 8th and 9th? Yeah, oh God, yeah, there's going to be new editions, but they're not going to be called new editions, and especially if they're trying to go all online, which I guarantee they are, what do they need it for? But then what happens?
I think the only reason that they would ever need it, and this is something that is not a strategy they would build towards, it's something that would just happen, is if there's a market disruptor that's large enough that they need to throw a new edition to use it to like come back from a negative disruption event that happened. And they're like, oh gosh, now that people are doing full dive MMOs where you put on a VR headset and then you go into the world of the fantasy game and you can see as your character, you can even feel and smell things, and it's, in 2092, and we right?
Really
we're in 2092, and we want to do that. And D&D has not been able to survive that very long, very well, because our VTT still doesn't do any of that stuff. So maybe we need like a new, like some giant leap to technology, some big market shakeup. They might decide to do that, but maybe even at that point it's like, no, it's D&D, we've gone edition-less for so long, it's just, this is D&D full dive, and they just don't put a number on it. Even then, they probably might not put a 6, they might just put some other words after it, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
So it's not doom, and so HG said the doomy and gloomy perspectives of our hobby. It's not doom and gloom.
It's not necessarily negative.
It's not negative. It just, first of all, I believe it just is, because this is, I think D&D in paper form has peaked. And unfortunately, paper form of Dungeons and Dragons, even though it sells millions of copies, is just not nearly enough. It just isn't enough for $1 billion company to make enough money off of. They can only make a couple of $100 million, which is not enough. It's just not enough money.
In all of its time being around, like the D&D like Core 3 have probably sold, they have definitely sold millions, but they probably haven't sold tens of millions unless it's just barely into that. Each, I mean, right?
Yeah, and definitely not.
They shouldn't have. And so therefore, if you're talking about $1 billion company, it's not going to put out all of the numbers that it wants for for a brand, and that's because it's just such a giant company. It demands success of a level that anyone else in the tabletop RPG industry would be like, why is this not enough for you? This is very successful already.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, this is, put it this way, if this was owned by a different company, they would probably just keep doing kind of what Paizo does and kind of what everyone else is doing, is they're just happy coming out with new versions of the same game and updating it over time. But for being one of the most popular and recognized brands in the entire world, they can barely crack $250 million. They can't even crack that. They can't even crack $250 million, which is pathetic. I mean, it sounds negative. It's not. If you probably look, they have these ratings of like the most popular brands in the world. And I guarantee if you see each brand and then you see how much money each brand makes, it's all in the billions. And I guarantee D&D is by far, not a little bit, it is beyond the least profitable of all of them, probably by a factor of like 50 to 100. And they probably look at that and they say, we are not making even 1/50th of what our next person is on this list, and we have to fix that. And it's because of the market and where they are now, and it's constrained. If they're doing just books, they're going to be constrained to just books. And there's a reason why Marvel went to movies. Like, Marvel actually went down this same road in the 90s. And Marvel went bankrupt. People remember that. They went bankrupt because they just...
I only remember that because of the times that you mentioned it on the show. But I do remember it now. I'm never going to forget.
They're completely bankrupt. Like, they couldn't grow, and they kept trying. And then as soon as they stopped growing, they literally went bankrupt. And then they realized, you know what? The properties we have are worth billions. Way more. We make more money on the actual brands of our superheroes than the actual books. I mean, when was the last time anyone here bought a comic book? Like, okay, I still buy comics, but I buy weird comics. You know, one of the comics I never buy like mainstream Marvel DC. I'm always buying third-party comics. But the point is, it's such an itty-bitty, it's a teeny tiny marketplace compared to the multi-billion dollars that they make every single year on the Marvel movies. One Marvel movie made more than Marvel made in like 5 years combined, 10 years combined. It's no contest. And yet it's the same characters. So that's why D&D is so desperate to protect their IPs and so desperate to try to use the name Dungeons and Dragons. By the way, I was watching the D&D movie. It's so sad, Mark. It was on cable. I was like, on Saturday night, I was watching D&D. I was like, I just saw this in the theater, and it's already on my cable TV. I still had a fun time watching it, but I was like, that's so sad. It's so fast how they come to cable.
It's fast.
It's so fast. But the thing is, I know what you're saying. Beam score. I'm going to talk about that in a second. You want me to say Magna or Manga? I know. I think he said, but anyhow, Manga. So Manga is doing phenomenally well. I actually just had a morning meeting about Manga, believe it or not.
I didn't know that.
Well, I was talking to Diamond, and Diamond, that's their big thing.
There you go.
But as big as it is, it's a very crowded market. And it's not like they're making, yes, they're doing well for that market, but they're not making billions of dollars. They're just not. You know, they're doing very well for what they are. But they're going to have to expand out, and there's a D&D television show coming out. There's probably not going to be another movie because the movie just didn't do well enough, and that sort of stinks. But they're going to come out with the VTT, and then let's go into the future, Mark, because we keep assuming this VTT is going to succeed.
Yeah, the most of our episodes are about the VTT succeeding,
and
since
all
they
the stuff
put
succeeding.
So much money into it. They got lots of really good developers to code it. Are you going to give a hypothetical where it fails?
what happens if it doesn't? Yeah, that's the thing. It's like like seriously, what happens if they put in all this money and no one's using it? Seriously.
That's a very good question. That could be a situation where they have to hard pivot and they do make a 6e as like an escape from the VTT failing. I don't expect it to fail because that monetization scheme has been successful in so many other places and they hired the right people, but it might.
Right.
So I could see a 6e. I could see them like another possibility is that this is something Hasbro does because some people are maybe they would sell it and someone else will make a different version of D&D, but Hasbro would vault it if they're like instead of selling it. If they were like, there's a reek of failure on this, so we'll just throw it in the vault, not do anything with it, own it. And after a certain amount of time, we'll pull it back out and do a reboot.
They might just
I think they would do that overselling it.
I think they'd just sell it. I think they might.
You think they would sell it? But they've done vaulting with other things as opposed to sell.
But the amount of money they threw into it and then to revamp it, and why would things be different? Just call it a day and try to sell it to someone.
Are you sure? Because if they vaulted it, they could still do other things with the IP.
Yeah, but like the
D&D Magic the Gathering line set was a pretty popular set for Magic, for example.
Yeah. I don't know. That's the thing I keep thinking of. It's like, what happens if it just doesn't succeed? What happens if the VTT fails? Like, I don't think it will because the D&D is still very popular. Everyone uses, a lot of people use D&D Online. D&D Online makes a ton of money.
You mean Beyond, right?
Sorry,
not
Beyond.
Not the MMO D&D Online.
I know. I keep saying I keep D&D Beyond. I mean, D&D Beyond. I don't think it's going to fail. I'll put it this way. I don't know if it's.
I think it's going to succeed too.
I think it's going to at least succeed. That they're not going to kill it or get rid of it. I don't know if it's going to be a runaway success, but it'll be a success enough that they're going to keep it going until it is a runaway success. Yeah. Well,
we got over 50 likes without even asking for it, Steven. Do you have some other thing you're going to open?
No.
Show them like a cool picture from Jewel of the Indigo Isles.
Okay. I was like, I can't think of anything. I will show something.
What's your favorite?
I can't. There's too many spoilers.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of spoilers. You're right. You probably can't.
It's like, what's my favorite picture? I don't know. Like 99% of the spoiler is spoilers. Like, I mean, I can show some of the monsters in the back. Oh wait, I have this picture.
Yeah, you're right. This is an adventure. Maybe I picked a bad idea.
No, this one I can do.
Have
here. Look.
There we go. Look at that.
It's an Orpak.
It's an Orpak.
Orpak with the Bountiful Harvest is what that's called. The Bountiful Harvest. It's when you need to fill in a page. Look, that's the monster parts page, and I had most of a page filled, so I threw in a picture. There you go. That's 50 likes. So people, by the way, are saying that manga sells millions and millions. You're completely right. Okay. Manga outsells
the reason why
comics.
You're also right, Steven, is that like other comic books sell less than manga do by a significant amount.
But there's also less comic books. Like if you go, the amount of it's a very crowded marketplace, and also it's a different marketplace. It's not apples to apples. It's very, very different, the two markets. But it is, because I'm actually literally on a book selling website right now, and oh my god, like they have. Now I'm getting heavier into the book side, and I'm learning a lot. And one of the things I have learned is they have different types of like months. So like there's a company, it's called Edelweiss or Edelweiss. It's a U.S. trade.
Or Edelweiss?
Edelweiss, maybe? Yes, Edelweiss. I just signed up for it, so I'm still new to the vernacular. But Edelweiss is like where every book is listed and where people go and buy books, and they can also download previews and stuff and review copies. And they have like, I'm looking here, they have Christian Faith month, Young Adults month, but here they have Graphic Novel month and Manga month. They actually have like entire month dedicated to manga. Manga does really well, but it's a catch-22 because they do so well, there's so many of them, so it's hard to cut through, I'm looking here. I'm just actually on right now. I'm looking at all the manga. I've never even heard of 99% of this. Not that I'm a huge manga reader, but still, it's like,
I mean, some of it might not be translated into English either.
well, that's something else, right? Is that, and a lot of the stuff.
If you got worldwide sales, it might be something that's popular in Japan, but that they decided wouldn't be popular in the US.
Yeah. That being said, I am very curious. I did see Netflix release the live action trailer for One Piece yesterday, and that looks good. that looks exactly like the comic. It feels like the comic. I was like, ooh, I was actually very excited to see that. I just started getting into One Piece. I was very fascinated. You know, One Piece is like one of the most successful books in the history of the world. It's about to like,
it has like so many episodes that it just keeps going.
It's one guy. It's one guy who does he writes it, he does everything. It's one guy. And he started when he was like in his 20s, and he's still doing it.
It's had over 1,000 episodes.
It's amazing. It's incredible. And it's pretty good. I was reading, I was like, I don't love the title, but I was like, I was reading I have all the books. I was like, wow, this is...
It's still not as many as Detective Conan, which, like, how many mysteries can one person, like, be locked in a room until they come up with?
Really?
Yeah, Detective Conan, which has a mystery in every episode, has about like
what's Detective Conan? I've never even heard of that.
It's an anime that is
okay.
based on like a detective.
Yeah,
like is drugged with a drug that's supposed to kill him, but it winds up like reverting his age to be a child, and he's on the run from a shadowy organization. So he goes by Conan, you know, the middle name of the author of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, Arthur Conan Doyle.
And and then he winds up secretly solving cases while appearing to be a child. It has roughly like 20 or 30 more episodes than One Piece, or some they're very close. They both have over 1,000.
Yeah, One Piece. Yeah, it was pretty fascinating. I started to read it, and
I have not watched nearly close to all of the episodes of either of those. People asked in chat, did Conan grow up yet? I have no idea. I only saw the ones that were
shows.
I saw the ones that were in English dub for Detective Conan back when I was younger, because that was a long time ago. They did like the first season or so, so it's like 1/40th or 1/50th of the entire show or something like that.
I don't know. You see, I'm also a snob when it comes to these things, because it's funny, as much as, so I was playing Horizon Forbidden West, which has like some of the best graphics I've ever seen, pretty much ever in life, for a video game. And then I was playing Zelda, and I really like Zelda, but the flat graphics just get to me after a while. And then I'll get back to it. I got about halfway through, and I'm just like, I just can't take it anymore. I need to go back. And as soon as I went back to Horizon Zero West, I'm just like, it's just so beautiful. I'm a graphics snob. Like I like my pretty graphics. I like really, really good looking AAA games. I shouldn't, but I am.
I'm not a graphics snob.
I am.
And I feel that graphics snobs harmed the industry for a while.
You're completely right.
That we've fortunately, agree. Thanks to distribution models changing, that we've gone back to a renaissance of indie. But back before Steam and some of these other distribution models that came out, there was a small desert of a few years where it was just hard to see innovation, because graphics snobs forced everything towards the same big studios that were putting out repetitive stuff that they knew they could succeed with by making the best graphics. That's my unrelated to like whether Fifth Edition will be the last edition hot take on and I know more people are graphics snobs than not, so I know I'm in the minority on that, but I feel like it was harmful to the video game industry.
So I think Zelda is amazing graphically. I do think it is.
Zelda's not amazing graphically, but I think that's great. It's great that they don't care so much about graphics. So they're doing the best they can with the Switch, which is actually pretty fantastic.
Well, trust me, the draw distance and what they're doing is phenomenal.
Given they could do that with the Switch, which is such an outdated piece of hardware that your phone leaves the Switch in the dust by miles. it is actually very impressive.
It's
However,
impressive.
a true graphics snob, I think, would still be snobby at Zelda because it's not up the graphics snob stuff.
I'm impressed with it, but I'm also
okay. Then you're not the graphics snobs that I'm talking about when I said graphics snobs cause problems.
No, trust me, I know it, but I also am the one who plays I play God of War, and I also play Horizon Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West, and as a developer or past developer, I know what it takes for both of these people to do what they're doing. And it is stunning. Like, it's like, when you see the level of detail on these games, both of them in very different ways, it's just fascinating. It just fascinates me. A good example, and this is 10 years old, I can't believe it, but when Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, and they mapped, like, Southern California, I'm like, and they mapped all of it. I was like, and even the roads, like the roads are uneven and you see like patches in the roads, just like real life, and the sidewalks have like, cracks in them and bumps, and like, I'm like, any other games, like they just make the sidewalk and there's little imperfections, but you see the repeats. But these things, they just don't do any of that. It looks completely realistic. And little things like that, that's the difference between, the old, did you ever see Breaking Bad? Ever watch?
I saw some of Breaking Bad.
So in Breaking Bad, there's a famous line where Breaking Bad, the whole thing is that his stuff was, I think, 98% proof, and the expert they brought in could get it up to 96, and he was like, the difference between the 96 and the 98% proof is monumental. It's like, it's such a huge difference, even though it's 2%. That's the thing. It's like, I've seen a lot of games that are really good and they get 96% of the way there, but the Grand Theft Autos and the God of Wars and the Horizon Zero Dawns and even the Zeldas, they get to 98.
So I'm going to say,
they get all the way. And I'm like,
I'm going to say, based on your description here, that, and obviously everyone has their own definition for turns. We talk about this in tons of episodes. People fight because they use the same word in different ways. Yeah. When I'm talking about a graphics snob, I'm talking about someone who it's just like, it has to be the most numbers on the HD of anything that anyone has ever done. And it's beyond a point where a human eye can even tell the difference, but they still care. You seem more like in this, like, a film snob, but as applied to a video game.
Yes,
where it's like it's a directorial vision of all the tiny little details being in line. Yes. It doesn't have to be the highest hardware quality graphics, but it's like, did you pay attention to the details, or did you just like smooth it over with some engine you purchased just to get to the gameplay?
Yeah, no,
that's what kind of snob you seem like to be when you're talking about it.
I am that type of snob, because I see that, because that's whenever you're talking to filmmakers often talk about specific shots and like how a shot is made, which no one else will notice. It's like same thing. I look at the games because I know what it takes to do the amount of engine calculations it does to do specific things in a game. Like, one of my favorite games of all time, you want to talk about not being a graphic snob? Pikmin. Okay, Pikmin 4 is coming out next month. Can't wait. I love Pikmin. Pikmin's one of my favorite games.
Linda likes Pikmin 2 because of the little leshy things.
Pikmin 2? Are you talking about Pikmin 2 as in TWO or
no, I mean just Pikmin. She also likes Pikmin.
Pikmin 2 is my favorite Pikmin. Pikmin 1, 2, and 3. 2 is my favorite. Pikmin 4 comes out this next month. Comes out in July. So I'm very excited. That's a very simple, but that's another example of a very beautiful game that has lots of little details. And it, we used to call that the Blizzard polish, like that extra level of polish where they add just a little bit more. By the way, Final Fantasy 16 also has that level of polish. Mm-hmm. Like, you're like, damn. Like, when you see that game, you're like, damn, this game is realistic. Like, a little too realistic. There's a scene where you're a dragon fighting an elemental beast, and you're flying through like the city, and as your missiles miss the elemental beast, it's hitting buildings and they're crashing to pieces, and you're like, they programmed all of that. It's like, that is really hard to code. Like, they just went.
Final Fantasies have had attention to detail.
Yeah.
And I'll actually give an example of this that shows the one time that even I was a graphics snob, because there's a level at which I will get snobby about it, and where the film snob approach is different, which is Final Fantasy VII. So I basically could get almost any level of graphics. I won't be able to even tell the thing that the graphics snob is talking about, even if it's way worse than anything that's coming out these days. But Final Fantasy VII was in the one uncanny valley for me, where if it's sprites, I'm cool. If it's 3D and it's not terrible, I'm cool. But Final Fantasy VII looked horrible, and it looked like people had hooves, and like it was just the art. Just it was constantly turning me off. However, from like the film snobbery shot by shot, I watched a video where someone pointed out like the opening sequence where like Cloud's coming off of the train and he beats up the people, which he can, they have huge technological limitations, but the way that that's expressed, they like showed everything that was chosen and then how they redid it in the remake as well with modern technology. It was impressive, and they paid a lot of attention to detail to it. But I'm not the film style snob, so I didn't care. It just like it looked like they had hooves, and like I couldn't handle that particular graphics. Anything before that and after that, even Final Fantasy VIII, which does not have very good graphics in total, that's enough for me that my brain doesn't like have issues with anything from that and beyond. But that FF7 style old school PlayStation 1 games that were like, let's do 3D, but we're kind of not ready to do 3D. Those were the ones that got me.
Final Fantasy VII, I got it. It was I was living by myself. I was in Manhattan. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and I got myself Final Fantasy VII, and I was going to play it throughout all of Thanksgiving. And I remember exactly what you're saying, Mark. It starts off, it has like the pre-rendered cutscenes. And I was
the
like,
FMVs.
Yeah, the FMV. And I was like, wow, this looks great. And then you start off in the train station, and you have realistic backgrounds with the absolute blockiest, horrible models I've ever seen. Like, I was like, oh, this is contrast is so bad between these models. It took me out of it to a point of
that's how bad it has to be for me to actually have an issue.
Bad.
If it's any better than that, and I just don't care.
They show it every so often. I'll be like, oh, it is so bad. But Final Fantasy VIII, I love Final Fantasy VIII. That was
once
fantastic.
You get to 8 and beyond in graphics, like, and anything that comes out nowadays, unless it's just like very, very poorly done, I just don't pay that much attention to that. I'm too busy like looking for hidden secrets and just trying to be a completionist, or paying attention to the gameplay and like the numbers and figure out my build to notice if like it has more pixels or fewer than normal for a game these days.
But you know what? And I would say you take the Dragon Quest games, because those have the cartoony look, and I love those. I love Dragon Quest. I love the look of Dragon Quest. But the thing with the Zelda game is like, I do love the Zelda game, and I do like the new Zelda quite a bit, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. But I was looking, after seeing the flat graphics for whatever, how many hours I put into it, like 100 hours, I was feeling the itch to see something else. I think that's like anything. It's like eating the same food every day for like a month, and then you're like, it's not that I don't love this food. It's like eating ice cream every day. It's like, it's not that I don't like ice cream, but I need to try something else, and then I'll go back to eating ice cream. So I'll get back to it, but I'm almost done. Also, the story in Horizon Zero Dawn, the first game came out the same weekend as the first Zelda, and it got destroyed. And then the second game, Horizon Forbidden West, came out the same weekend as Elden Ring. It's like, come on, man, really? It's like you come out with literally like the number 1 and number 2 games like of all time the same weekend. Come on, like how many times can that happen? And these games, I think, are superior. Actually, I love these Horizon games; they're so freaking good. Anyhow, that was our video game diatribe.
There we go.
Playing?
It was interesting.
What are you playing right now, Mark? What are you playing?
What am I playing right now? Well, I was playing Curse of the Dead Gods. That was on Humble Monthly. It's like not as good as Hades by far. It's way worse. But it's like kind of similar in that it's a roguelite, but it doesn't have any of the story or base camp stuff from Hades that is like the best part of Hades.
Yeah.
But you do go around with weapons and attack things, and it seems like it was based on that kind of concept. I'm also partially in Fire Emblem Engage, but Linda has been doing Fire Emblem Three Houses a lot, and that's also on the Switch. So when she's not, I'll probably go back and play some more Fire Emblem Engage. So those are some things. I was also playing another thing that was in Humble Monthly, Grime, which is a Metroidvania, but I beat a boss and the merchant that sold one of the armor pieces that I was getting just disappeared. And after 12 hours, I was like, oh, so yeah, that armor piece is missable. And now I'm never playing it again. So
that sucks.
Yeah, because I don't want to spend 12 hours doing it again, and I want to get all of the armor pieces. If I can't, I know they're going to do things like that again to me, and so there's not really... I like when a Metroidvania, I want to explore every room and get all of the things that are in it. If they're going to give me time-limited stuff, then it's not worth it.
Yeah, I like Diablo. I was playing Diablo 4, but it got very samey after a while, and I don't know. The other thing about Diablo 4 is like, and it felt this actually, I've seen this happen in games where they keep the challenge exactly the same. So it felt like you were always, it didn't matter if you were level 5 or level 10 or level 20 or level 50, the challenge was the same. So I was like, I like to feel like as you get stronger, you feel like you're stronger, and I just didn't feel that. I felt like they kept it exactly the same. So it like everything stayed the same level as you. I was like, kind of don't really. I wasn't enjoying that as much. And because in Diablo 3, you could actually set it to make it much harder, and there's like infinite settings. Here, there's only 4, and you can't even get settings 3 and 4. You can't get those difficulty levels until you beat the game. So
right, because it's like normal, nightmare, and hell mode.
Yeah, well, there's like normal is easy. Like there's only 2 levels. It's like,
I mean, normal is always easy in the Diablos, though.
That's the problem. It's like
you can just have a horrible.
I like it really hard.
Horrible. You can have a horrible build in Diablo, any of the original Diablos, and you'll do fine on normal mode. But you're going to get wrecked on like hell mode.
Yeah, I like playing Diablo where you're like barely making it by the skin of your teeth, which is actually why I like Horizon Forbidden West, because for Horizon Forbidden West, you can change difficulty at any time, and the fights are all against these gigantic creatures that are like the size of like skyscrapers, and they are hard, and they get harder and harder, and they get you die a lot, like you will die, and they are epic fights. Like after every one of these fights, you're just like, oh, like you're literally exhausted. I was like, wow, that is a big, like you just barely get through it, and you've gone through every single health potion, and you've gone through all your ammo twice, and like that's fun. That's what I find fun, which is actually what I also find. Oh boy, you know what I did this week, Mark? Pathfinder. What? I'm so bad. I'm such a bad boy. So they fought. Okay, they were level 12, and they fought a level 13 hag with her like advanced nightmare steed, right?
Oh,
and
nightmares are tricky. They're nasty customers.
Well, they were getting their ass handed to them, and then
nightmares are immune to fire, and they don't have the fire trait. That's not good for an elemental avatar of fire.
Well, this is what ends up happening. Well, let me get back to that. So that's when they were level 12. And that creature got away. So then they're now fighting the same hag, who's still level 13 with her level 13 advanced nightmare. But they're level 15, and it's on top of a tower. And they were starting out, and they actually hit her so hard in the first rounds that she just did ethereal jaunt and just disappeared. And they're like, and they were asking because in first edition they would actually go invisible and you can still see them if they're in ethereal plane. But I said, no, in second they're just gone. Like they're literally just gone. It does last a minute, so they eventually do come back, but unless you have a way to go to the ethereal plane, they're gone, and you got to wait till they come back. So they're fighting the nightmare. They killed the nightmare very quickly, but then she comes back out from ethereal jaunt, and she calls her friend, which is the umbral dragon. They have all dropped multiple times because they're like,
Umbral dragon.
They're like, oh, this isn't such a bad fight. We killed the nightmare in 2 rounds. She's half dead. What? How bad can this be? Oh, Umbral Dragon, we're in trouble. Which is, I think level 16. And it's funny.
Ooh, that's only one level higher than them. But
yeah,
after
but it's a
having to fight the
dragon.
nightmare and the high,
no, the dragon's dead. The nightmare's dead. And
yeah, but they were previously fighting the nightmare. It was probably a Koshimar at that point because they're so high level, and then the hag. So it's not like they're coming in fresh.
Well, you know what happened? I'll tell you what happened.
What happened?
Vanessa had 170 hit points. I did Draconic Frenzy. I hit. Because I rolled like a 14, 16, 18, and then I do the Hail Mary, and I hit again. I rolled a 19, and she's like, come on! And she dropped. I did like 190 points of damage. She's like, 4 hits in a row! 4 hits! And I'm like, sorry. And then it did the breath, and the breath does 16d6, and I did like 68 points of damage, and people crit failed. So I was like, okay, it's like 130, was it 6 points of damage or something? I was like, sorry guys. So that fight, we didn't finish it, but they're in real trouble. They're all at dying through 2 or 3. Everyone's barely alive. Oh, and then Hap, she flew 90 feet up in the air, and because she only had 17 hit points left. And I tried to cast a spell. She's like, ha! You can't reach me. I'm too far. And I said, you're right. Magic missile, 9 missiles. And I was like, God, magic missile, plan A. And I hit her. I was like, 27 hit points. You die. And that was it. What happens when you die, by the way? If you're flying and you get hit.
If you get knocked to 0 from flying, right, then you would be dying 1 from the magic missiles. Then you will fall.
Right.
Depending on how high you are, you could die from massive damage if you're like thousands of feet in the air. But you probably don't die from massive damage, so then you'll get down to dying 2 because you fell. And then you might just die on your turn if you roll natural 1 on your recovery check.
I didn't even bother.
If you're a monster, you may die instantly because the rules for monsters are if they're not an important monster, you can just kill them.
I didn't even bother with that because she got up anyhow the very next round. But I was like, that's just too mean. Her face, poor Lauren, her face when I said magic missile, she was like, they all just got very quiet because they know there's no save. It's like, that's it. It's just damage, man. It's terrible. I was like, wow, and 120 feet. Oof, it was just. I actually felt bad. 9 missiles too. I just felt bad. It's like, oh well, you're dead. Anyhow, back to this because I see we're losing people. So what do you guys think?
Yeah.
Do you think D&D will never...
I'm interested what chat thinks. I saw a few people talking about things in the chat earlier when we were going through this about the edition and whether they think people are going to spread out more and play different games or other things like that. I think that you're right overall, Stephen, and that it'll take something big happening for them to shift this strategy because with their new model and their new way of monetizing, it no longer is in the era where an edition cycle every 8 to 10 years that is billeted as a new edition is a good thing for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They want the only way they're going to make money, real money, is they can't sell books anymore. I mean, it's just not going to happen. They they're just not going to sell books. I mean, books are just not enough money. It just isn't. So, is my sun tanned? Yes, I sat out in the sun yesterday, and I got very tan / sunburn, which is only weird because everyone else was in the sun and no one else got sunburn. That's not true. My wife got a little sunburn, but everyone else, and mine's really bad. And I probably should have put on sunscreen. But it was overcast. It was like one of those days, like it just didn't feel like it, you know? And the next thing you know, I was like, it's like, does my skin hurt? And then I looked down, I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Oh, well, what can I do?
There you go.
If we get 100 likes, I'll do something new. Here's the book.
You'll do something new?
Yeah.
But won't give spoilers for the book? Like, I know I
have
suggested
other
it before.
books here. I have other books that aren't Indigo Isles. Oh, I have this new book I got from our friend. I got Side Quest from.
Cool. From Anto, right?
Yeah. He sent it to me. All the way from the UK. Yeah. Actually really nice. He uses an on-demand publisher. I was like, dude, we gotta talk. I was like, you don't want to use an on-demand publisher. You know how expensive
he's probably paying so much for that that I'm sure he'll be able to take a little more and give it to himself and his other people who are working on the product with him if he does not use an on-demand publisher.
I know. Well, if you do less than 100 books, basically on-demand is good for less than 100, but he's not. And I was like, look, you got to stop using an on-demand publisher. It's like they are just beyond inefficient when it came out great, though. It's like, you would never know. This is like although actually, I bet you I can tell. Let's see. Yep, that's how you can tell. So, here's a little tidbit while people tell us what you think of this. I'm going to tell you a trick how you can tell something's on demand or not. Are you ready?
Okay.
So, do you see this? You see the difference between the two books?
Let me see.
See the top?
The top of the book?
Yes.
What's different in the top of the book?
So, all Paizo and Pathfinder and D&D books are exactly 1/4 of an inch shorter than 8.5 by 11. Oh, you're talking about the
height. Yes, I could see that the height was different.
Yeah, so all these books are exactly 1/4 of an inch, which is weird. So all D&D books, like if you ever line them up, for whatever reason, whoever did this, it's like back all the way in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Day, it's like whoever did this, these books are all exactly, they're not 8.5 by 11, they're 8 and like 3 whatever quarter. So it's not a normal amount, but this is 8.5 by 11. So if they're print by demand, they don't use this weird sizing, so you can always tell. So if your book is a little bit too big, then you know it's print on demand. That explains it. Yes.
So there are a few takes in the chats now. People say the money is in the VTT now. There's also people saying they don't want to give a logical jumping off point to leave the game. And so if they keep it the same, it will keep the gravy train going.
That's an excellent point. And I missed that, but you're right. It's that the OGL gave everyone a safe time to leave. And a lot of people, they won't talk about that.
And a new edition would do it again.
Oh, yeah. They're like basically not talking about that. And they keep saying, the OGL didn't affect us. We're fine. It is not true.
I mean, just like Reddit was saying, we weren't affected by everybody going black and
yeah, but I'm going to tell you something about that Reddit. They don't care. That's the thing. They actually don't care.
Yeah, the CEO had like an interview where he was like praising the gutting of Twitter that made Twitter lose tons of its value. So clear, any who sees like, I want to go down that path. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Yeah. There's also a question that we kind of answered this before, but someone in chat said, if this flops, are they done for good, or do they rebuild the same game all over again, calling it the same edition? And that's where we talked about it before. If like the whole thing flops, will they shelve it for a while and bring it out later, like new Coke, and going back to old Coke? Will they just sell it to another company? Will they make another edition to try to distract and like remove the memory of the failure? Like those are all strategies they could use.
I think they're not going to do it. I think it's going to succeed. No.
I think it's going to succeed.
I think it's going to succeed.
I also do. But in chat, they're asking, what if it doesn't? And we did mention that briefly in this episode. And none of our other episodes did we really take that into account, because it's very likely to succeed. It may not be the most like morally benevolent model of monetization, but we know from other situations of it that it's effective monetization, and it's a very, very famous brand. So it's pretty likely to succeed.
Yeah, and on top of that, if it's really likely to succeed and they use their brand and they have it working on cell phones and they make sure that they tie all the existing game into it, it's probably going to succeed. Especially, it's like, okay, the only place you can get these adventures is on our game. And also, if they do a subscription model, so that's the way everyone's going, by the way.
Yes.
And we didn't even talk about that. We talked a little bit about that last week. So the way that everyone is going now is subscription based, which is
100%.
Yeah, it's that you pay for $20, somewhere between $9 and $20 a month, $10 and $20 a month, somewhere between there, and then you just get everything. And if you said, okay, you pay $9.99 a month and you get every single rule book and all the adventures and as many characters as you want, people will do it because it's a value proposition's way too good.
They can do $9.99 a month, and that'll get you like the introductory package, right? That you could also be the power user who pays $19.99 a month, and that will get you
extra
the
stuff,
Driftstoward and unlock and some extra shinies and extra benefits and other things that are exclusive for you. And they'll get enough people who do that that can justify making new content that they wouldn't have spent $120 in a year of purchasing books. Not all these people who would subscribe for $9.99 a month.
Yeah, I mean, and as soon as they do that, these people, that's what they don't talk about. And I'm very curious because the D&D Beyond, they lost a lot. And I mean, they were losing thousands, tens of thousands.
Multiple people in chat said they're going to be greedier than what you just said, Stephen. That's too low of a price for them to give all the content away.
Be surprised. You'd be surprised. Hold on, I killed my dog. What do you want?
Because on D&D Beyond, they have to subscribe already, and they still charge for every PDF. So yeah, people in chat are all saying that they think that you're not being greedy enough compared to what they think WoTC is going to do. Well, and I mean, they might be right. They could split the difference though by just being more than $9.99.
I think there'll be $9.99 for first of all,
maybe $9.99 won't get all the PDFs of all the adventures in the books. That'll just be like the baseline, and if you pay more, then you get all the new books that come out.
There'll be different levels. I guarantee there's going to be different levels, but it's going to be a subscription-based service, and you're going to get everything or nearly everything. And that's the point: is that once you're in that ecosystem, and because that's what everyone's talking about now, it's not about game systems. It's not even about games. It doesn't even matter if it's D&D, it's ecosystems. Because once you're in the ecosystem, and this is what they're going to do. They're going to make it at the lowest tier. I'll say they'll have a $4.99 tier. Is that they make a $4.99 tier where you can make as many characters as you want and you can play as many games as you want. The reason for that is that if you have all your characters in that ecosystem, they don't care. They don't care if you're $9.99 or $10.99 or $20.99 or $30.99. They don't care what you're paying, because once you're in that system, you're never going to leave. And they don't even care what game it's going to be. So that's the secret. It's like once you're in there, that's all they care about. And, they get you at a low price point. You guys are saying it's too cheap. I disagree. I think it's going to be cheap. There will be higher levels, because what will happen is they would rather get $5 or $10 from hundreds of thousands of people than, $20 from less people, and they don't want to make a super higher barrier to entry. The same way that you can get Hulu with ads for less than you can get it without ads. Like, if you really want it without ads, you can pay more money. So that's it. That's what they're going to do. And then, as you said, right, it's like it might cost only $5 a month to join, but then emotes and special spell effects, those can cost $4.99 each, or $9.99 each, or $20 each. Like, that's, and they're gonna have it monetized to death. And once you're in the ecosystem, it comes back to the original point. It's like it's a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 20th, 100th edition. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what edition it is. Right? Who cares? Because they don't care. They don't care what edition it is. As long as you're in the ecosystem and paying money, that's all that matters. So, but again, it's not depressing. It's because I almost hate to say it. It's like, I bet you it's going to take a long time, but I wouldn't be surprised if Paizo and everyone else goes this way too. I think it'll take them significantly longer, like,
it's gonna be rough because
10,
WoTC paid
years.
what did you say, $100 million for the devs to build this thing?
But they're gonna not have to, because what they're gonna do is they'll integrate more closely, and they already are with Foundry, or they're gonna do something like that. They're gonna do something more similar, where Foundry already is to the point that when you play Pathfinder, it does a lot of calculations for you, and it's getting more and more advanced every day. So it will get to the point where eventually they'll just maybe see the writing before the wall and realize, you know what, we just got to automate as much as possible, and we can still have a complex game, and we can still automate most of it, but not necessarily everything. Or they come out with Pathfinder Lite, or some basic version, Mark, where it has not 100% of the game in it, but maybe only like 60% of the game, the most popular 60. If you think about it, that's what GDoc is. Like, Word has, I don't know, 10 trillion pieces of functionality, and 99.9% of the people use like the same 20 things. GDoc is those 20 things plus a little more. Okay, that's why GDoc is so popular, and those online programs are so popular. You could probably argue the same thing. It's like, as popular as Pathfinder is, and as many options there are, do you really need everything? I mean, I would think you would probably say, yeah, you do, because you never know what you're going to play with. But maybe that's part of the, sacrifice you make if you do simpler versions. It's not as crazy, it's not as big, it's not as, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You're distracted, I can tell. He's like, oh, he's distracted. Did you hear a word I said?
I did.
Okay, well, what do you think? You think you can make a simpler version of Pathfinder and still play it?
I heard your whole thing about the simpler Pathfinder, and I think the beginner box is where you start with that, right?
But could you actually just make a version that only goes to 10th level, and that's it? Like, you
could, and you just take out all the things that are at the higher levels, or just have fewer classes and other things like that. No, I heard your thing. It was just it was long, so I wanted to let you give your whole pitch.
I'm done. My pitch is it's going to get easier, and they'll make a baby version, basic version, if you will, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you just don't want the crazy everything in it version of Pathfinder. It's like maybe the barrier to entry is too high, and they want to make a lower barrier entry version.
Yeah, I mean, you could build it out of the beginner box, which has the first 3 levels. Mm-hmm. You could say, hey, this is beginner box 2, intermediate box. It goes to the first 6 levels. Mm-hmm. Or you can do whatever you want in that regard. But I think that is probably going to be orthogonal to if they ever created a fully marketplace version of Pathfinder. I think that's a long ways off, though. Like you said, if it ever happens, Paizo's not close to being the company that is optimized to do that, though, because Paizo has the know-how to put out quality products for tabletop RPG that are books and in also PDF and forms. And so I think it would take a transformation, which Wizards did dramatically so by hiring all those people. But the Paizo has not really begun to do that.
So before we go, hey, look, it's World of Battle Zoo, Indigo Isles. Do you guys have any questions? This is coming out in less than a month. It's coming out in July. Probably.
And when he says it's coming out in less than a month, he means the Kickstarter is beginning in less than
18th, a month. July 18th is probably the date. Probably not the 11th because a little bit close to July 4th. Probably, July 18th is the date. But we're going to have ancestries, we're going to have dragons. I even had some, if you subscribe to the newsletters, I had some pictures today of what the dragons look like. I had one picture of the dragon. We're actually doing something cool, is that I figured out a new design layout, because one of the problems with dragons, and Mark, why don't you talk about that, about the problems with laying out dragons?
Have an issue.
This is actually very interesting.
It's a well-known issue. Pathfinder 2e ameliorated it, but did not solve it. If you look at Pathfinder 1 dragons, you'll find it's a very stark situation where, like, I found this out when I was trying to look at lore for some of these dragons for our dragon book, Battles of Ancestry Dragons. I was like, what exists about forest dragons? And there was some in the Pathfinder 2 version, but in Pathfinder 1, it was just like, forest dragons are capricious and evil, and they live in the forest and they climb the trees. And that was like almost the only thing it said, because it ran out of space. The problem is that these dragon stat blocks, because they have repeated abilities that can say, I see the previous dragon, they wouldn't fill out like a full, like one full page each for every dragon, with one, especially given that they have like a consolidated lore stat block. But trying to fit 3 on 2 pages, like Pathfinder First Edition tried to do, was a disaster, and you wound up cutting like everything out of the lore. Pathfinder 2 made it a little bit easier by making the whole family be a story, so that you could like figure out where they begin and end, and they didn't have to all stop on exactly a spread. But Steven came up with a way to copy fit them that would help with the fact that we wanted to add even more lore than was in Pathfinder 2. And he wanted more things to end on spreads than has typically been done in Pathfinder 2 Dragons. And he was able to do all of that.
Yes. Basically, if you look at dragons, the problem with dragons is that they put a whole family on there, and it's very tight. There's very little, sometimes there's very little. It just doesn't fit, okay? You're trying to fit 5 dragons in 12, 16 pages. It's a mess.
It's 15 stat blocks, 5 different kinds of dragons.
It's a mess.
It works in Pathfinder 2.
I got it to work.
There's more lore now than there was before, but
it took me.
We at Battle Zoo always want to roll for combat in the Battle Zoo products. We always want to give you premium lore for the most interesting creatures like dragons. We don't want them to be the ones that have the least lore because of layout reasons. And so by ordering more lore, we challenged ourselves at the time. And Steven's like, I'll figure out something later for the layout to make it work. And he did. He came up with a layout trick that is going to add additional lore, not just any lore, but like in-world narrator lore that about the dragons that are in the stat blocks to fill out spreads, so that we not only add more lore, but then we double down and add even more lore so that it all fits. Yeah.
So long story short, is that what we figured out is right now the way it works, if you look at monster stat blocks are 1 page or sometimes 2. And that's it. And that makes sense. The problem with dragons is that they were trying to fit 15 dragons into an even number of pages. Without having the spreads go, like, you don't want to have a dragon go from 1 page and then you have to flip it to go to the other page.
Correct.
So it's really hard to get, like, how the heck do you do that? And it was
very difficult. Like, as someone who has had to deal with the after effects of copy fitting for
Yeah, I am.
Let me see. I had to do the copy fitting on the bestiary 5 dragons from Pathfinder 1. And I'm sure I did the copy fitting for the primal dragons in Pathfinder 2.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember anymore because we did so many iterations, but I probably did at least some version of the copy fitting of the chromatic and metallic. Maybe not for the final bestiary though in Pathfinder 2. Like, I've done it a lot. It's painful.
Yeah,
you lose
really
text
bad.
that you want to keep a lot of the time. And so I'm really excited about your solution where you don't lose any of the text. We're keeping all the best text. We're adding more cool in-world lore from everyone's favorite dragon commenter, Calazandrax, the green dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I basically figured out, so every dragon will get 4 pages. So we'll get 3 stat blocks plus at least a page and a half of lore, plus sidebars. So you'll have the pages are going to be filled to the brim with content. So we will have 20 pages. Is that right? Yeah. Wait.
I'm not sure if it's
4 times 5.
You said each of the 5 dragons is 4 pages. That is 20.
20.
Yes.
My brain. I was like, wait, is that 20? Yes. 20
it's
pages.
Gonna be 20 pages for the 15 dragons.
For 15 dragons. And
it's more than Paizo
that's
would
more
ever
than
give
Paizo.
them.
And it's more than everyone else, actually.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is now I can also plan it. So it's always going to be, it's also easier for you mentally. It's like, oh, here's the Amber Dragon. Here's the Indigo Dragon.
So we have,
here's the
basically,
Vermilion.
if you think about it, there's 3 stat blocks and lore, and together that's 4 pages. They don't have to be exactly 1 page each. No. We're flexible on that, but together that's 4 pages.
Yes. And so that's one of my favorite things we added. And there's tons of art. I mean, this is the first book in our World of Battlezoo line, because people wanted to know more about the world of, I didn't call it the world of Alucard, because that's the name of the world, is Alucard, but no one knows what that is.
When you call something like a proper noun, it's hard for people to understand what it is. So that's why we call it World of Battlezoo. And the lore on some of these settlements and regions is pretty fun. Like when I was checking in on some of the stuff that some of our freelancers, Grady Wang and Paul Hughes have written, I was checking like with Linda, because she created the Cragrack ancestry, to see about like some of the things that Cragracks were doing, and she was very excited about some of the new places that you can see on the islands for Cragracks. Also, she's making a Cragrack character who is an Eldamon trainer, and she was thinking about where to be from, and she's probably going to pick one of the new towns. I mean, it's not new, it's on the map at least in Indigo Isles from before, but towns that now have information about them and be from there.
Neat. So yes, we're always trying to innovate. That's like the big thing here. So like I'm always trying to come up with something new. So it's like lore books, it's part lore, it's part some statistics, obviously new ancestries.
Yeah, it's got a lot
bit of everything.
It's got the kind of rules that people are looking for to support their lore. And we actually did a survey on this to find out what people are looking for in a lore book. And then we also factored in, because there were some people who answered that survey and said they didn't want any lore in a lore book. And we're like, okay, so they did not want a lore book. They wanted another rule book. But those people aside, what did people want in a lore book? And it turned out that a lot of it were things we were already thinking of putting in, but we took all of those and we put them into the Kickstarter. That tends to be lore, well, obviously, but then also ancestries that are common in the setting that the lore book is about. And we've got tons of those. And then they usually said that they would want to see like maybe a few archetypes or archetype feat expansions to other archetypes. And possibly like companions or familiars or things like that, but of a lower priority. And we even have those too.
But the one thing also people want, they want NPCs, and we have, because
and plot hooks. They also said that a lot of people wrote in because we didn't give plot hooks as one of the things. I was sort of thinking that was part of lore. And so we made sure
Mm-hmm.
when you create an area, you want cool plot hooks that get people excited about playing in that area.
Yeah, so we have lots of lore, lots of plot hooks, lots of pictures, and that's something else I think people liked, is because this way they can take these not pre-made, but they can take these NPCs with these really cool backgrounds and pictures, and they can put them into their own adventures. I do that.
Exactly.
I would do that all the time. And then you have a nice picture, and then if everyone, a lot of people, it's almost like, well, you wrote one of the towns, and it was a bit of a spoiler, but the person who built the town is dead, but his ghost still is there.
Oh, I didn't write that one.
Oh, you didn't write that one.
That one's hilarious.
Oh, that one is fantastic. It's like the guy who, that's right, Paul wrote that one. It's like the guy who designed the town, he's still there. He still talks about it. He's just a dead ghost now.
He's an obsessed dragon architect. He used his entire horde to build what he thought was going to be the greatest city ever known. But then people didn't show up.
Yep.
But his ghost is there to tell you about, and it doesn't attack you. It just will chat with you and be like, look at how great the city is. Over here, you can see this pavilion. And I am the architect, and I built it in this very particular way.
Nicholas Paradise says, is this book going to ship soon? And the answer is, as soon as it gets into the warehouse. The book is done. Look, it's all done. It's literally just getting on a boat from China to
this
here.
This is the approval copy, so Steven does need to check to make sure it's all in the right place.
Yeah, I actually have to go through it. I just got these, so I'll go. It looks fine. I mean,
It looked great to me so far, but just make sure it doesn't have a double signature or a misprinted signature.
Yeah, that's actually the main thing. As long as it doesn't have double signatures, I just went through it. I don't see any doubles. That's super rare, but that did happen to Ian World, and that was a nightmare. And they had to reprint it, and it cost them like $20,000. So,
yikes.
Yeah, you do not want that to happen.
It's a disaster whenever it happens.
Because once you approve it, it doesn't matter. It's like, like if there's a double signature and you approved it, it's like, oh, sorry, you approved it. Oh, you know what happened to me? I still think about this all the time. I was at Tiffany. It was a long time ago. The jewelry maker, and this guy. I was getting my ring engraved, and the guy came in, and he got a piece of jewelry, and Tiffany jewelry is very expensive. He got a piece of jewelry engraved, and the engraving was wrong. And he freaked out, but they were like, you signed off on it. It's like, you approved it. They had his signature. It's like, this is what you told us to do. And he's like, yeah, but it's right. It's like, what do you want? And they were trying to appease him. They're like, well, we can buff it out and redo it. And he's like, but what? And he's like, but it's engraved. What can you do? And it was like, I still think about that. I'm like, and he was just so angry. And I'm like, always double check, man. I was like that. I always think about that. I was like, if you're getting something engraved or something, you triple, quadruple check that. Although I did not listen to my own advice, because I went to the Mets-Yankees game, and I had 2 sets of tickets. This is last week.
Did you get your tickets engraved?
I did get my tickets engraved. No, I had 2 sets. I had one set, which is like right behind home plate. That was fantastic. And we gave you private entrance, private eating establishment, all this stuff. And then I have another set, which is still good, but it was off on the first base side. I sold the wrong set. I sold the set behind home plate, and I meant to sell the set on the first base side. And my son's like, all right, we're going to the game. Dad, you sold the wrong tickets. And I was like, what? And I was like, I didn't listen to my own advice and double and triple check. No regrets. That's exactly right. And that's the same actor who is now Adam Warlock, believe it or not, even though that guy was a kid at the time, and now he's gigantic in the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie. You ever see that? There's I forgot what movie that was, but he has a big tattoo on his chest, and it says "No regrets." It's completely misspelled. It's like, I love that one. Anyhow.
Oh dear.
Yes.
So I guess
check that out. But yes, this
it's coming relatively soon.
Yes, this book is
shipping.
That book
is going to be shipping as soon as Steven approves it.
I think it's going to be a Gen Con too. So.
Oh, Jules going to be ready for Gen Con? That's cool.
Well, we're getting a whole bunch shipped to Paizo, And we're going to be selling all of our just the Pathfinder books, of course.
Because when is Gen Con this year exactly?
First week of August.
Yeah, okay, so that's actually pretty soon.
They'll get there. So I'm getting all the books shipped to Paizo, because now Paizo is selling my books both on their website, and I don't have a booth, but I made an arrangement with Paizo to sell our books and their booth.
So if Paizo has it by first week of August, then some of other people might start seeing it first week of August too. No,
because we got to.
Paizo's kind of like our warehouse in the sense that they're going to get
a little early, and the reason also it takes a little bit longer because they have to. Because to ship out 1,000 books, it takes them a few weeks to get it organized, and they're only going to start once the books start arriving. Because they can't, they're like their timetable is like when the books come in is when they start getting, because they got to print out the labels, they got to do the boxes, they got to do the packs because everything's packed separately, and they got to figure that all out. And it doesn't take them that long; it takes them a few weeks. So if they get the books in. I'm just saying, if you get them in on August 1st, they're not going out on August 2nd. Like, they might be going out August 15th. You know, it takes them more August 10th.
That's still not too bad.
No, it's not bad, but it does take them a little while to get ramped up.
No, it makes sense. I can tell my dad, because he also backed our first Kickstarter, and he also is waiting for... He actually wants the Dragon book more than anything, but he is waiting for it because of Jules, so I can tell him that that's probably around when it might come.
Yeah. So, but there will be some books there, and I worked with Mike, and but big news is we are going to have pretty much all of our Pathfinder books, and this will be fun because they don't really sell third-party books that often. But
I mean, back in the day when I was working on the booth, they did have books, but it was always for licensed partners, which, well, for ComEd is. Yes. But it had stuff from like the Maze of Games by Mike Selinker or something like that would be on there, and then they'd have Kobold Presses.
Yeah, well, they're
some of Kobold Presses Pathfinder products.
Yeah,
like they'd have selected third-party things there, so it's definitely not like something they've never done, but it is.
I will say
it is an elite status that only
happens
generally for third parties that have a close relationship with Paizo for some reason.
Well, I'll tell you why. There's one reason. I'll tell you, Mark. Not one, but there's a couple. They want to make sure as many Pathfinder products can get out there.
Yeah,
and our products are very different than theirs, so we're not really direct competition. And two, our products. You know, people might say, I'm like, we talk about how high quality our products are. They probably, if our products weren't good, they would not take them in their booth because they don't want to bring down the quality of their they don't want our products to bring down the quality of their products. Like if our books were not as great or not as good quality compared to theirs, they're going to be like, it's like you just don't want that. And one of the main reasons is because our books come out so freaking nice, and I've had this talk with them, is that they're very proud to have our books next to theirs because they're just as good, if not, I hate to say better quality than theirs.
I mean, the paper quality, at least you paid for better quality.
Yeah, it's way better. But to be fair, I have a much limited, like they have 60-pound weight, I have 80-pound. They are also shipping out tens of thousands of books.
Correct. So think about how much it would pay to ship that.
Correct. Yep. And I asked them how I should do it, because I was thinking of doing thinner paper. And they were like, look, consider this a premium product. The same way that when they did their Kingmaker book, oh my God, which is just, this might be heavier. I think this is heavier. This
might be.
This
super
book,
long.
Yeah, I mean they have, how many pages is this thing? This thing is a monster. This thing is 600.
That makes sense though.
630
so themselves
pages.
Suggested to you to do a higher quality than they did because of the way that our product is different.
Well, this they had to do with thinner paper. So okay, Kingmaker's a barely smaller, but this is a 630 page book. If they use this,
it's
using
super
this
long
paper. Not only would this book weigh 6 pounds, it would be an extra like 30% bigger, which is 2-inch spine. That's
That's
too
ridiculous.
big. Like I wouldn't even if I wouldn't do that. This is about as big as I will ever get in retrospect. I almost wonder if I should have done 70-pound paper. Almost. I didn't, but I think about it if I should have done that. But it is coming out. So I'm going to be at Origins. I have some games. I'm probably going to be hanging out mostly with Knights of Last Call because they're from the area. Some of the other people from Roll from Combat will be there. I believe on Saturday, Bob Marquis. Remember Bob? He was in the Starfinder campaign. He will be there. Jason McDonald, who's one of my best friends, he's coming in from Pittsburgh. And John Stats, I don't think he's from the area. They both live in Cleveland. Bob and John live in Cleveland, so I don't know if they're coming down. Jason's in Pittsburgh, but he is going to come down for one day. So you'll get to meet some of them, too. So you get to meet a whole bunch of us. But I'll just be around. I mean, you can just say hi. I have no real plans. I'm not giving any talks or anything. I'm not in a booth, so there you go.
All right.
But there you go. So anyhow,
there we go. And so thanks for coming on our unusual day here and listening to us talk about predictions that Stephen has had from before even the OGL crisis. Really, like this is connected to one of the major theses that he presented in his 100% accurate predictions video that was like super accurate to what they were trying to do. Yeah. Then that was like almost a year ago at this point.
Yeah. Well, I just find it fascinating because they are the leaders. So whatever they do, if they truly say D&D is going to go all virtual and just become an online product, and the paper is going to be a secondary or tertiary product and just for special editions, how does that affect the rest of the industry? It's like suddenly they don't even see themselves as a role-playing game anymore. And then suddenly Paizo is the leader, which could happen. Like, that sounds weird when you say it out loud, but I can see that actually happening, that they suddenly don't even consider themselves a role-playing game, a TTRPG. They can just consider themselves an RPG, like a Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft, and they are now in that space, and they're too big for us. And now suddenly Paizo becomes number one. So, that's the difference. I see people, some people think because the paper's so thick that there's something wrong with it or that it's stuck together sometimes. I've actually heard that more than once. But no, it is sewn. See, look at that. Woo! See that? Look at that. Sewn right in there. See this? You can see the stitching. I actually had a long talk. It's funny. I wrote the printer. I said, are these books sewn? I just want to make sure. And like 5 people wrote me back. They're like, yes, they're sewn. We make sure. Like they went through all of this thing. I was like, okay, calm down. I was just making sure that's sewn in, because after I was doing all these talks with the WoTC books and how they're glued in and they fall apart. And I was mostly concerned about this book because a 420-page book that weighs 4 pounds, I want to make sure it does not fall apart. But I don't think this thing... Look, if you throw it, it's going to fall apart, okay?
If you use it to block a bullet from FBI's most wanted who comes to your door, like Stephen did with the core rulebook, it's going to fall apart, okay? The thing, it's a book, okay? It's not it's comparable to, remember your college textbooks? Remember those? That's what this is. I do remember my college textbooks, Steven.
That's what this is. So, all right. Well, I might see you guys at Origins. I'm definitely going to get on the Knights of Last Call because they're bringing their whole setup. I already spoke to Derek, so I'll definitely be on there. After that, I don't know. So
there you go.
But anyhow, otherwise, I'll be here again next week. We'll probably do it on Wednesday like our normal time.
We'll see you next week.
Mm-hmm.
Same time and place as most weeks rather than like this time.
Yep. All right, guys.
Bye.
See you later.